In Chapter 13, Joe and Pip visit Miss Havisham's house. Pip is embarrassed by Joe, as Joe always talks to Pip, so Pip can talk to Miss Havisham instead of directly addressing her. Miss Havisham gives Pip a generous 25 pounds. After Pip and Joe leave the house, they arrive home and everyone is overjoyed at the sight of the money. Pip is later sworn in as Joe's apprentice. This action, in a sense, binds Pip to his trade.
In Chapter 14 of Great Expectations, Pip begins working as Joe's apprentice. Time passes and Pip becomes a teenager. Pip hates his job as an apprentice, but keeps his feeling to himself because he doesn't want Joe to know how he feels.
In Chapter 15 of Great Expectations, Pip tries to expand his knowledge. He does so by trying to teach Joe to read. Also, in Chapter 15, a new character named Orlick makes Pip's life very unpleasant. Orlick is vicious, hateful, and treats Pip very cruelly. One day, Pip comes home and he learns that Mrs. Joe has been attacked and is now unconscious.
In Chapter 16, Pip learns that the convicts are the suspects of the attack on his sister. Mrs. Joe, who is now unable to talk, draws the letter T on her slate. From this, Biddy predicts that she is referring to Orlick, and he is called in to see Mrs. Joe.
In Chapter 17, Biddy moves in to help with Mrs. Joe. Pip later visits the saddest house again and sees how quiet it is without Estella there. Pip takes a walk with Biddy and reveals to her that he is in love with Estella. Biddy says he should stay away from her, but Pip gets mad and is also jealous when Orlick flirts with Biddy.
In Chapter 18, Pip is at a pub listening to Wopsle read the story of a murder trial from a newspaper. A stranger begins questioning Wopsle about the legal details of the case. The stranger introduces himself as the lawyer Jaggers.
In Chapter 18, Jaggers tells Pip that he will inherit a fortune. He will go to London and become a gentleman, and lastly Jagger informs him that the person giving him the money has to be kept a secret. In Chapter 19, Pip begins to catch an attitude. Later, a tailor comes in to get him fitted for a new suit. Him and Pumblechook go out to dinner and integrate Pip into the city. After he gets back, he tries to comfort Joe, but he fails. Biddy criticizes him for it, and they get into a fight. He visits Miss Havisham one last time. Pip feels more than certain that she is his anonymous benefactor. As he goes to sleep for the last night, he feels bad that he acted so rude to the people he loves most.
Jaggers takes Pip to London after Pip gets his fortune to make him a gentleman. Pip becomes amazed because of the drastic shift from a rural to an urban area. However, there also comes negatives with this, as he is also disgusted with the smells that come with an urban city. After talking with Jaggers for a while, Pip meets Jaggers' clerk, Wemmick.
In Chapter 21 of Great Expectations, Wemmick introduces Pip to Herbert Pocket, the son of Pip's tutor. Pip and Herbert immediately take a liking to each other, but Pip feels something is off. Pip soon realizes that they have met before, because Herbert is the pale young gentleman whom Pip fought with in the garden at the settee's house.
Chapter 22 of Great Expectations, Herbert tells Pip of Miss Havisham's past. Miss Havisham and her brother Arthur were left a massive fortune by their father. Unfortunately, the man that Miss Havisham later falls in love with conspires with her brother against her. The man convinces her to buy a brewery from her brother. She complies, but on her wedding day is left alone at the altar. She later stops all of her clocks at the exact same time she received the last note from her would-be husband. This chapter is vital to the novel as it reveals that Estella was brought up to break the hearts of men because of Miss Havisham's past.
In Chapter 23, Pip visits the commercial world of the Royal Exchange. Then he visits the Pockets' house. It is crazy with servants running all over the place. He then meets his fellow students, Matthew, who is kind but absent-minded, Startop, who is also kind, and Bentley Drummle, who he sees is unpleasant. At the dinner, Pip focuses on his table manners.